event. I'm Rajesh, founder CEO of Troopr, and we are talking about Slack-first-Jira today. In this post-COVID era, we are, in a situation where people are continuing to work from home, and work from anywhere is sort of becoming the norm everywhere across workplaces around the world. In such a setup, how effectively you communicate and collaborate has got a great impact on team's success. If you want your team to be successful in a work from anywhere setup, you have to ensure that you have effective means of communicating and collaborating with your team using processes and tools, digital tools that you set up for your team. So how do you do this? And especially, what does this mean for the Atlassian customers? How can you rapidly adapt to this new world where everybody is working either from office or from home, and your team setup has to adapt to such a distributed team work? So for Atlassian customers, this means that you have to learn to effectively communicate and collaborate with your team using the tools that you already have. And the combination of Slack with your existing Atlassian tools can deliver exactly that. Today, we are going to talk about 3 key pillars of this Slack-first-Jira solution. The first thing is Slack-first asynchronous meeting, where we learn about how we are going to asynchronously communicate with the team and keep better communication. And we're going to talk about Slack-first project management, where you can use your existing Atlassian software tool, but deliver the entire power of project management directly inside Slack for better collaboration. And we're going to talk about, for a larger team, how can you deliver a superior support experience directly inside of Slack while it's powered by Jira Service Desk or Jira Service Management. So these are the 3 things that we're going to cover. I'm going to start with, why should you even care about Slack first, right? If your organization is already using Slack, one thing will be very clear to you, that Slack is where your team is. The adoption rate and in terms of how long people are online in Slack is very, very high compared to any other chat tool that has existed prior. Slack continues to have the highest engagement for any communication tool. You save a ton of time for your team if they don't have to keep switching from Slack to the other tools, especially in case of Jira. Other than the people who really leverage the power of Jira in their day-to-day work, like the stakeholders who manage Jira, the rest of the team is not really looking forward to spending a lot of time in Jira. So how do you solve that problem? You want to make Jira faster. You want to make Jira more pleasant to use, more intuitive to use. You want to make Jira available directly inside Slack. And I don't mean just Jira notifications coming to Slack. I mean the entire power of Jira coming inside of Slack. So you can do practically everything that you do on a day-to-day basis directly inside of Slack. We're going to see 3 use cases today. So you have an understanding of really how this can pan out in your team if you decide to use Slack first, Slack integration for Jira. And the first scenario we're going to talk about is in an organization where you have a help desk that's powered by Jira Service Management. So if you're not already familiar with Jira Service Management is a ticketing solution offered by Atlassian. It's very powerful. It's if I'm not wrong, used by in excess of 70,000 teams around the world, and it's growing really fast. And the recent upgrade into Jira Service Management has really ramped up the capabilities of the tool, and we want to make sure that the power of this tool actually reaches to a wider audience. So how do you make this happen? So you have to look at how can you engage your team better inside of Slack, because you know that people are in Slack and actively communicate, collaborating inside Slack. So for this demo, I have set up 2 workspaces. On the left, you're seeing a workspace where a customer is logged in. The customer is Satya. On the right, you're seeing a workspace where the service desk agent is logged in. I'm sorry, I might have not shared the screen yet. Really sorry about that.
Yes, Rajesh, we are able to see your screen now. Thank you.
All right. So unfortunately, you had to look at my face while I was talking about all of these. I was hoping that you would see at this beautiful slides rather. But anyway, this is what I was covering in terms of like why you should care about a Slack-first solution. And we're going to now talk about Slack-first ticketing. So I have here a demo setup where on the left you're seeing a Slack workspace where a customer is logged in. On the right, you're seeing a Slack workspace, the same Slack workspace, where the agent is logged in. The agent's name is Sundar. He's manning the help desk. So he takes care of addressing any support queries that comes within the organization. So now let's take the example of Satya here reporting an issue. Hey, my email client is not working. So in a traditional setup, what happens is when somebody reports an issue like this, the agent will have to copy this information, get all the context of who is reporting it, go to Jira, open the portal and file it. Yes, he can ask the customer to do it, but a lot of times, people just feel more comfortable to just, ping in Slack and say, hey, something is not working for me, rather than going to a portal and filling up a form. So in an integrated world where, Slack is fully integrated with your Jira, all you have to do is click a button here, and it captures all of the information about the conversation and the help desk where it needs to file the ticket, and you click create, and the ticket is created for you. So in a single click, now you have not just captured the conversation as a ticket, but you can see here that it's actually actively syncing with Jira. So usually the conversation starts from this point where, typically the agent is asking for additional information. So let's say in this case, he's asking for a screenshot. Now, a couple of things are happening. One, the agent is continuing the conversation in the same place that the customer reported the issue. And agent also, chooses to inform the rest of the team members that he has actually picked up this ticket. So he just clicks on assign to me. So now the rest of the team knows that he's picked up this ticket and he's working on it. And the customer can continue the conversation here. So he can say, yes, I do have a screenshot I could attach. Maybe he picks up one here. And attaches it. And let's say, so this is some back and forth is happening. And eventually the agent has figured out what is the solution for this. Like, can you... Right? And a very thoughtful solution. And now the customer sees this and, he's trying it. And let's say that this is resolved the issue for him. Right? There's some amount of back and forth that has happened here. And you see here that both the agent and the customer never logged into Jira during this entire conversation, right? You can click on the ticket here that was created and go directly to Jira. You can see here that in Jira, all the information is very nicely captured, including the attachment that was sent in this channel. The entire conversation has been captured nicely, and there is a link to the Slack conversation in case you need to refer later. Let's say now that the agent chooses to mark this as done from the portal. And let's say that you can see here that the task item status changes to done immediately in real time, right? So from the customer standpoint, it's not just that he's able to communicate his problem to the agent directly in Slack and have it captured in a ticket without having to even fill up a single form. He's also being actively updated about what's going on in that ticket, along with the status information that comes to him directly in the same thread. So there's no duplication of effort. There is no jumping around across tools. Everything happens seamlessly directly inside one single thread in Slack. And that's the power of bringing Jira completely inside of Slack. It goes beyond just delivering notifications. It actively syncs conversations that are happening in Slack into Jira. I hope this finds some resonance in any of your team scenarios. That's the first demo. The second one that I want to talk about is Slack-first project management. Now, let's assume that you are either a stakeholder or a team member in an agile team that's following Scrum methodology. And let's say that your team is actively working on a sprint. In a traditional setup, people are actually having conversation in Slack about some parts of the work that needs discussion. And then when it comes to actually updating status, people are switching to Jira and then going there to make the status updates. Now, how does this look in a Slack-first, completely integrated setup? Let's go back to Jira now and see a Scrum project. So we have here a Scrum project where there is a backlog. And let's say that I'm starting this sprint now with a bunch of tasks. So this is, to this point, everything is pretty clear. I mean, this is how traditionally it has worked always. People start the sprint and then, they get to know from a daily stand-up meeting or during one of the Slack conversations that the sprint has started. But in this, integrated scenario, you can see here that the channel that is connected to so that channel that is connected to Atlassian's and the Jira project will automatically be notified about the sprint that is started. Let me see if I'm on the correct sprint. Probably not. Let's say that this sprint is just completed. So we're talking about a scenario where this team is now actively working on a sprint and the sprint is just starting. So I'm going to start the sprint again, bear with me. And as soon as the sprint is started, you can see here that a sprint started notification is delivered to the Slack channel. People are getting notified in Slack about a sprint that just got started. It's not just about the sprint that's starting. You can get notified with some additional context here. So I'm going to show you an example of a report here that gets delivered to Slack. Let's say that we are talking about a Scrum demo project. So let's go to that project. So I'm going to set up a burn down chart here. And let's say that I'm going to have it delivered to my team channel every day at 10 a.m. Hey, this is our active sprint. Take a look at your issues. And let's say this is where I want to, this channel where I want to deliver, right? So I go ahead, start this chart. You can see here that it has pulled the burn down chart and delivered it to the Slack channel. Now, this is not just for information. You can see here that it has picked up the custom message that I configured there. And it also has a nice little show issues button at the bottom. So you can click on this to see that these are the issues that are part of this sprint. And you can also go ahead and take action. So let's say that I'm working on billing email notifications right now. I want to make sure that my comments are getting captured. So I can just go here and say, maybe just waiting on design confirmation. And maybe I just completed one of the tasks that are assigned to me. Maybe it's the notifications, which is just over. So I can click on change status here and say maybe done. All right. So you can see here all of that nicely updates directly inside of Slack. You didn't have to leave Slack to make any of these updates. So it's not just limited to changing status and commenting. You can go ahead and link issues. You can assign to other people. You can log time, which is very frequently used by our customers. You can, in case you have a lot of custom fields, you simply click on edit, and it opens up a form just like it would open up inside Jira with all the form fields that are configured for the edit view. The ones that are required automatically come on top, so you don't miss them, and all the optional fields come later. So you can, it supports all kinds of standard fields and custom fields, and it completely respects the way Jira is configured and also respects the permissions within Jira. Right? So this is a quick example of how your team can stay completely in sync and be notified and take action directly inside of Slack. A lot of times, that's all the difference that it is between people keeping Jira up to date and not keeping up to date. If the data in Jira projects is not current, everybody loses. People who are managing the projects are not don't have the most current information. The stakeholders don't get the full picture of what's going on. A lot of times blockers come up in the last minute. You have a couple of days for the sprint to end, and then suddenly people are talking about issues that are blocking. Those kind of things can be avoided if the team is always in sync and always up to date. Everybody knows what's going on all the time. So I'm going to quickly, so I mean, there are a few other things that I could show you, but one of the things that with integration you can do is not just be notified and take action. You can even create new issues for a lot of people using Jira. The most frequent action is just looking up what are their issues, right? I just go to a board, look up the issues that are assigned to them. You can do that by simply typing /t list from anywhere inside Slack. Just type /t and list. That's it. And this works wherever you are in Slack, doesn't really matter. It pulls out a response which is only visible to you. So you can look at tickets that are or issues that are assigned to you, and you can go ahead and take action as well. So a lot of beautiful things that you can do if you integrate your Slack and Jira together. A lot of new opportunities to keep your team on the same page. I'm going to quickly jump into the third demo, which is how do you make sure that you actually run effective meetings and keep communication, keep up the communication with your team members when you no longer can rely on people being on at the same place at the same time, right? In a physical office setup where everybody came into the same office, and people are sitting next to each other. You always had the luxury, I would say, of pulling in people into a meeting room and conducting a stand-up meeting or any impromptu meeting and going over the list of issues. In a remote setup, or at least a fairly distributed setup, the equivalent of doing that is to spawn up a Zoom meeting or a meeting like this, where you bring everybody in and then go over the list of issues. Yes, it is equally effective a lot of times, but it can also be very expensive. A Zoom meeting is not the answer to every communication problem you have. You have to make sure for a remote team to be successful that you have a healthy mix of asynchronous communication and synchronous meetings like Zoom. So the missing piece here is effective asynchronous communication, right? And Slack is a very powerful tool for asynchronous communication if you are using it right. I'm going to show you quick examples of how you can best use Slack for effective asynchronous communication. And the first example is going to be a stand-up meeting. In an agile team, everybody knows what a stand-up meeting is. People come together and go over, what is the latest, and what are they planning to work on, and if there are any blockers, right? So that's the traditional stand-up meeting agenda. Let's look at how that looks like in an asynchronous world, where you run stand-up meetings inside of Slack. So the way you do this is to set up a stand-up meeting. It's called daily stand-up check-in in Slack. We just set up a check-in like this. Call it whatever you like. Pick the participants, and you pick a frequency, how often you want to run this. A lot of times what we have seen is customer mix and match their asynchronous meetings with Zoom meetings. So there will be like one day in a week where people are getting on a Zoom call to have a face-to-face discussion. In the rest of the time, it's just asynchronous updates that you are setting up in Slack. So let's say that Monday through Thursday, I want to have this meeting, and it needs to happen at 10 a.m. right? So when you do this, what's happening is Troopr is allowing you to conduct a virtual meeting where you can ask a set of questions, and by default you can see here that it asks these following questions: what did you get done since the last report? What's the plan for today? And if there are any blockers. You can completely customize the kind of questions that you want to ask. You can be any number of questions. You can also slide in a team mood question where you can just have sort of like a nice breaker where you're just asking, hey, how are you guys feeling? If not, just move ahead. And set up where do you want to send this report? All right. So when you have collected all this information from your participants, where do you want to send this report? So let's say that I want to send it to a channel where people are expecting to see this, and that's pretty much it. When you complete this, you will have a stand-up meeting, something like this, where let's say that people are able to answer the stand-up meeting directly in Slack by clicking on a simple answer button. So every day at the scheduled time, you will see that people are being asked some questions. So it's not just that these questions are asked, it also prompts you to update the issues that are assigned to you, which is nice because a lot of times people just before the stand-up meeting recall that hey, I might not have updated the issues that are assigned to me. So when Troopr conveniently prompts that during the stand-up meeting, it's easy for you to look that up and make updates here, and then go ahead to answer the questions and say, what did you work on, and what are the answers for these 3 questions. So once you do this, you will get a nice little report in Slack, which looks something like this, where everybody's response is nicely collected and presented to you. A couple of things I want to point out in this is, one, if you are just saying that, hey, I'm working on some Jira issue F3, F53, it automatically creates the links for you, and also automatically pulls the issue summary and keeps the context here. So this is very convenient, for Atlassian customers when you're conducting Slack stand-up meetings. As somebody who cares to know the status of what the team is up to, this is a nice way to look at that information. The same thing is also available on the web, so you can click on the web report to see what's going on. Right, so the web report is convenient when you have to look at historical information. You can go to the previous reports and see how people answered, and also you can look at some insights. Let's say that, hey, I want to look at how my team members have contributed over a period of time, and you can see how engaged they are, each of them, and I can filter to see any particular person. Maybe I want to have like a one-on-one with this person. And I look and I pull up this report to see what has been his contribution during this period, the last 30 days. And I have a glance at his contribution over here just before that one-on-one meeting starts. So that can be really powerful reporting for you. So this is just an example of one of the ceremonies. There are other things that we do as well, like retrospective meetings that you can conduct inside Slack. When you set this up, you will receive reports that look something like this. You're asking questions like, hey, what went well, what didn't go well, and how are we committing to improve in the future? Retrospectives, I would say, is a lot of times equally as important as knowing what the team is up to on a given day, because there is no one process that works for every team, right? So teams have to slowly discover what is the most optimal workflow that's working for them, and for that, a continuous adaptation of that process to the current needs of the team is very essential, and that's the essence of Agile as well. So you have to always know the pulse of the team in terms of what they feel about the processes. So collecting such information on a regular basis and then acting on them can make all the difference. Especially in case of a retrospective meeting, you want to be sure that you're actually capturing the feedback and acting on it as well. So if this is the feedback that you're receiving from the team, you can actually capture some action items here, and all of those action items are nicely tracked over here, and people get to see what action has been taken. So if you are conducting retrospective meeting every month, there is always a way for you to look up all the action items from the previous retrospectives and what action has been taken on them. So you can make sure that people feel confident that when they share this feedback, it's being actively worked upon, and you are actually starting to see results. So Troopr does all of these operational aspects for you, so you don't have to care about doing any of this manually, and optimize for the best process that works for your team. The one other example, the last example that I want to show you is planning poker. For a lot of teams, especially slightly larger ones, it's essential to have effective way to estimate work, and the best and the most popular approach to estimating work is planning poker. If you're not already familiar, planning poker, the way it works is you pull together members of your team and ask every one of them about the important tasks that you're going to pick up for the next sprint, and how much they think is the estimate for those tasks. And the session goes on for typically for 10 to 15 minutes. You can, depending on how distributed your team is, you can set up a schedule. And when the timing is over, it pulls the responses from Troopr pulls the responses from every person who has submitted, and gives you a report like this. So you can see here that for each of the tasks, how people have estimated. If you go into the web report, you see much more details. You also see information about why people voted that way, and it also encourages you to have a conversation around that, and come to a consensus decision on how those tasks should be estimated. So these are good examples of how you can run effective asynchronous communication in your team, in your Agile team. So with that, I wind up the 3 demos. So we have 5 more minutes before we start the Q&A. So I will show you one bonus demo here, which is Jira reports in Slack. So this thing has always been a concern for me. I mean, I have run agile teams for a couple of decades now, from startups to large organizations like in Oracle and Juniper. And I've always experienced this one issue that people hardly make the best use of reporting, right? Let alone actually use them effectively. They don't even use Jira reports effectively. And Jira reports are really powerful. And if you if it's actually shared and actioned in the right way, it can actually make all the difference between keeping your team and projects on track and otherwise. So we're going to look at how you can actually deliver actionable insights into Slack from Jira. So we're going to take one example here where, let's say, yeah, so let's say that I have set up a custom report here. So I'm going to look up this particular report. So what you're seeing here is a way to set up a custom report in Troopr, which pulls information from Jira and delivers that into Slack. It's very easy. You just choose custom report, choose the type of report you want. It can be a bar chart or a line chart or a pie chart. Do you want it in dark mode or light mode? All of those nice things. And then you pull the actual data. So the data comes from, let's say in this case, demo service desk project. You can set up additionally a board filter, and you can customize the jQuery, and you can go ahead and set up how you want this report to be set up. In this case, I want the report to be issues by status. I have all kinds of options here. I can choose from, and I can also say the y-axis needs to be based on issue count or story points, or so you understand how the permutations can go, right? So it's a very powerful set of configuration options that you find here. So once you set this up, it is set up, as you can see here, for a specific time. So maybe you want to send this report every day at 10 o'clock in the morning. And when you set this up, you can see here how this report looks like. So let's go to the channel. Yeah. So this is how the report is. So it's not just a simple image. It's actually an actionable report. So you can click on the show issues here to look at all the issues that you have that's part of this report. You see here that these are the list of issues, and people can actually take action. So imagine the power of actually delivering a very impactful report that is not just for information, but actually gives the drill through capability, so people can actually look at it and say, hey, looks like there are a lot of issues that are waiting for my attention. And let me just go ahead, click on show issues, and look at the issues and take action right here, right? So that can, again, all of these are targeted towards better engagement and keeping Jira up to date all the time. And these small things can really make all the difference. Now, this report can be customized as you please. You can configure here to say, I want so my reports to be dark themed. I want the report to be a bar chart. I want issues by, maybe priority instead of this, and you just save it. And that's it. You just go here and say run now. And I get a report here based on your configuration, right? And you do the same things like show issues, and you can take action on these as well. All right. So those are the things that I wanted to show you. Again, one thing I want everyone to remember as part of this session is you can really change the game in terms of how you engage your team if you make the best use of your existing tools like Slack and Jira. Jira is a really, really powerful tool, loved by almost every team that wants to have effective collaboration. But there is always a challenge with respect to how you can get your team to engage effectively with Jira and keep Jira up to date. And some of the methods that I've shown you today are how you can actually make exactly that happen. And these are very practical steps, super easy to get started, super easy to set up. Troopr is somewhat prescriptive in that sense. I would say that how you want to run effective communication and collaboration in your teams, and hopefully you're able to implement some of these in your teams as well. So with that, I will just open up for questions.
Thank you, Rajesh. That's really a wonderful session. The Slack integration with Jira is really like amazing. Nowadays, Slack is ruling the market, so is a Jira. And the way you demonstrated the use cases is really like well connected to the audience. I'm getting a personal responses and feedbacks on the session. Really thank you for your time. And the audience, if anyone wants to speak with Rajesh, please ping on the chat window so we will enable the audio. Rajesh, we also have a couple of questions from Ramesh. I just messaged you. Could you please have a look?
Sure. /t list, can it be used to list risks and dependencies identified, included, and added in Jira? I'm not sure if I understand that question. So I can show you what is possible with /t list. And most of the time, what we do here is /t list is to effectively, is to quickly pull out the issues that are assigned to you. And this is just one way, and you can actually take any action on any of these issues. And if you want to actually create issues here, all the commands are available. I'll show you a quick example of what is possible here. When you, so the way to invoke Jira inside Slack is as simple as running a command called /t enter. /t enter. This you can do in any channel in Slack. It will pull out the entire command center where you can invoke all kinds of actions on Jira, completely comprehensive. Let's take in this example, I want to see what are the different commands that I can use. And you can see here that so I have a create command to create new issues, find command to just look up any issues, list to list, which I showed you in the demo. You can also update any issue. A very good example is people want to mark some issue as done using commands that you can do it here. You can add a comment to an issue quickly. So these are all things that add up, right? I mean, if you are doing these frequently, doing through a command is so convenient. And you can pull up the stand-up meetings that you are participating in by just doing /t check-in, things like that. A bunch of commands are available, and /t list is just one of them.
Thank you, Vijay. Thank you, Rajesh. Ramesh wants to talk to you, so I'm enabling the audio option to him.
Sure.
Ramesh, once I enable the audio option, please post your question and transfer the presenter mode on to either Rajesh or myself.
So while he does that, I just address this question. Is Slack free?
Sure.
Slack is completely free for most small organizations. I think you can, for a very long period of time, continue to use the free version of Slack. We started with the free version, and in our startup, for a very long time, we're using the free version. It has only one limit, which is that it does not give you history beyond 10,000 messages. And some premium features are not going to be available to you, like video calling and such. But majority of Slack's functionality is available for free. Go ahead, Krishna. Ramesh, sorry.
Can you hear us? I think you need to accept the settings permission. That's displaying on your screen, Ramesh.
All right, so we can move on to other questions while we wait for Ramesh. Any other questions that you should address, Subramanyam?
The questions that I received from the participants.
Sure. All right, so I want to just share a few information about anybody who's interested in how to get started, because you saw 4 demos today, and if you are interested in getting started, you just have to go to Troopr.ai and find install Troopr. If you already have a Slack workspace, then you can just install it in the Slack workspace and then connect it to your Jira account. If you do not have Slack already, I highly recommend you get Slack installed. Like I said, it's free for any team size, and you can get started from slack.com. Install a new Slack workspace for yourself and your team members, and it's very convenient and easy and free to get started.
Rajesh, if audience have more questions or they want to use the Slack first, how do they contact you or approach you?
Sure. The best way to contact us is to email us at hello@troopr.io. I will send there in the chat.
Yeah, please post in the chat.
Hello.troopr.io, and so what we are seeing is, right now the tool has started to see a lot of traction in primarily in the US, where Slack adoption is much higher than it is in India. India is slowly catching up. A lot of the modern teams are adopting Slack, pretty fast and at a very fast pace. But um, you know, in Slack is sort of like universally adopted in agile teams in the US. So we are seeing a lot of traction there. We want to create more awareness and share the knowledge of how people can benefit from using Slack and Jira. The Atlassian customers specifically, need to see how they can benefit from it. So if you're either considering or already using Slack, I highly recommend starting with Jira Slack integration. Troopr is not the only option. I definitely have to mention that. Atlassian has a Slack bot as well, and it is free. You can get started with that. It has good support for Jira software and Jira software on server, cloud, or data center. And there are a few other vendor options as well, which you can look it up in the marketplace to see what suits you best. But irrespective of what tool you choose, I'll highly recommend that you actually go with a Slack integration for your Jira instances. Assuming all of the people here in the meeting today are existing customers of Atlassian Jira software, you're going to surprise yourself and your team when you bring Slack integration for Jira. So highly recommend that.
Thank you, Rajesh. That's really wonderful. Yeah, we have many third-party plugins and marketplace tools. However, the integration that we have demoed is something which is really a spellbound and it gives a clear picture to the management. So that's really
Yeah, so we have worked really hard. It is over a period of last couple of years. We have developed this in close collaboration and partnership with a really large organization in the US. They are a 5,000 member team that is spread across 13 countries and 17 different offices across the world. And they started with Troopr and deployed Troopr across the enterprise. To keep all of their teams. Some teams are using Jira Service Desk, some teams are using Jira software, and all of their teams started using Troopr to keep their engagement with Jira happen directly instead of Slack. And I see one question right now in the chat, asking about security breach. So I want to ensure you that Troopr is particularly popular in the enterprise space. We have gone through the rigorous security reviews of some of the top enterprises in the US. So one thing is that we ensure that data security is a top priority for us. And beyond that, we have, we completely respect Jira's permission setup. So nobody can access Troopr's functionality without first connecting their Jira account in Troopr, right? So if you have X permission in Jira to perform a Y action, that is exactly the same permission that you will have in Slack as well when you interact with Jira in Slack. So there is no way that you can bypass any of the security privileges that have been set up or restrictions that have been set up in Jira. It's a one-to-one mapping. There is no way to bypass any of that. As an administrator, you go ahead and set up Troopr by connecting your Slack and Jira accounts, and from that point, everybody is connecting only after they validate their Jira account. So security is paramount, and we ensure that when you use a solution like Troopr, we completely respect Jira's permission setup.
One more from Ramesh.
How does Jira ensure privileges across within a sprint, across sprint based on level and role of logged in person? So one thing that you have to see is like when you receive these notifications in Slack, it is possible that, let me take an example. It is possible that you are actually seeing, I'm not sure if I'm sharing my screen. So let me share the screen again. So it's possible that you're receiving a notification in a channel where there is a member who doesn't have access to update the issues, right? So let's take that example. So if I'm the user who is looking at this message, and usually the channels are very thoughtfully set up in a way that it maps one-on-one to members of the project to the members of the channel. But in case there are people here who don't have access to make changes, when you click on this buttons, it will start throwing errors. It would not show these messages, it would start throwing errors. So the messages come to Slack from Jira are only actionable by people who have logged in and configured their Jira account. So you do that by going into Jira integration and configuring your Jira account here. You can choose the account that you want to link to, and then once you have done that, then you can go ahead and take action. Until you do that, none of these actions can be performed by the user in Slack. Typically, who can grant access to team members in a sprint? What we have seen is that the setup is usually done by the Jira administrator, someone who has permission to access across projects, and once the entire workspace is connected to Jira, individual channels will be connected by either Scrum Masters or the project managers of that project. So it's the responsibility of them. So if you're looking at here, there are two levels of configuration. One, the Jira administrator actually setting up the Jira connection for you that connects Slack and Jira. The second is project level connectivity from channel in a Slack to a project in Jira. That is usually set up by the engineering team manager or a Scrum Master or a manager of that project. So he's the person who ensures that the right set of people are given access to sprint, and the same set of people are available in the Slack channel as well. All right. That's it for this session. Subramanyam, thank you for this opportunity. I hope people got to learn something from this session, and hopefully some of those things they can implement in their teams in the future.
Yeah, definitely this is a valuable session on the weekend, Rajesh.